Hey Matt, how you doing?
Yo. Oh
Good.
shit, hang on, I can't hear you.
Oh,
Hmm. Hang on. It's probably me if you can hear me. Because I can't figure out how to get my speaker to work. Should I say something?
can you hear me now?
Nope. I do hear myself though. Hang on. Go back to the old style. Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Hang on. All right, I can hear you now, but I can't. Can you
So
hear
you can
me?
hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear
I can
you.
hear you. All right. How you doing?
Good, good. Do I sound
Yeah.
different or
No, you sound
sound the same?
fine.
Okay. It's like for some reason I can't figure out why my mic is I bought a new mic which I've been using to do screen recordings, but I can't get it to work with Zoom for some reason.
Oh boy, I know what you mean.
Technology.
But there's yeah. Sorry about that, man. I struggle
Yeah.
too. It's man. They talk about man versus nature, but it's man versus machine.
That it is. It's kind of I guess I should have tried to figure it out before we recorded, but even yesterday I was having trouble with it. So you just hope that it'll work, but sometimes it doesn't work out. Maybe my
Yeah.
I wonder. Hmm. Well, anyhow, what's happening today?
Oh, bro, not much. Woke up early, took care of a few things, got a little gym time in there. I'm not really into
Hmm.
5:30 a.m., but I don't mind 7 o'clock. It was down there. And then we got usually we do our brokerage meetings over Zoom,
Hmm.
since the pandemic and everything. But this week we're meeting in person, having a guest speaker. So that's kind of
Nice.
neat. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then oh, what else? Oh, I'm kind of excited. I've been communicating with these folks. You ever heard of? No, I'm forgetting their name now. I think they're called the Pregnancy Problem Center of Hawaii.
Wow. I've never heard of them.
For right for
No, there's Planned Parenthood.
right. So it's something like an alternative to Planned Parenthood, right?
Okay.
But I know it. The big news today about the leaked court opinion draft from the Supreme Court that would, as it's written, strike down the Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I remember something about that. I don't know much.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean that's a really big deal.
yeah, that's what I hear. One of our well, it's kind of off off topic a little bit, but I know I heard a lot of folks are picking up like the medications. I guess you can get the day after pills and stuff from the
Right?
pharmacies because those might be outlawed. I don't know what the rules are again.
Yeah. Well,
I
I mean, I think every state is different.
Mhm.
What they I was told yesterday when I was speaking to one of the administrators there was how actually you can get sort of, I guess, do they call that emergency contraception?
Yeah,
I'm trying to use not, I'm not trying to be judgmental on either side of the issue. You know what I mean?
right.
In terms of the whole pro life, pro I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's really hard because um, uh,
Well,
pro-choice
the
is a symbol for feminism, which I mean, feminism is really okay. I'll just throw my opinion out. I think it's pretty spot on. At least the feminism that I studied in school. I took just one class at university, and I thought it was really convincing. You know,
what was the take, I guess, on that?
well, so I took it was years ago. It was a I don't know if it was a 391 course or something like that. A kind
For
of
those of you who don't know,
social
we went to
science.
college a long time ago.
Right. The instructor was Mita Chesney Lind,
Mhm.
who's kind of, I think she's the country's leading um, feminist criminologist,
Okay,
if that makes any sense, right? Kind of a
so
hybrid
that's kind of the
academic
angle.
specialty. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we read all this, kind of feminist texts and everything. And, there's obviously an emphasis on looking at crime,
Right.
you know,
Obviously.
and yeah, really, so for me, I mean, I don't know all the details. I do hear opponents of feminism kind of cite some things and about, um, gender and identity issues seems to always come down to stuff like that, which I think is not really hugely consequential
Mhm.
between individuals. You know what I mean?
Okay. Uh-huh.
So I'm for feminism, but in all honesty, I really I like the idea of people using alternatives to abortion, right? I'm not on this whole thing about, well, let's try to stop them from doing this, or even outlawing it. I'm glad they have politicians that can make those kind of big decisions like that. But I don't know, like when I was a kid, my mom had a really good friend from when she was young, and at that time, like in
Mhm.
the 90s, right?
Mhm.
Uh, her friend worked for an adoption agency,
Mhm.
and so there were some, you know, uh, one of them was like 16, and the other one was, I think she was in her mid 20s, but she was
Okay.
an
Yeah.
immigrant from Central America.
Mhm.
And they what they did is they did a kind of like home placement. So they placed
Mhm.
a couple of these women at our house who are pregnant, and they didn't want to have an abortion for whatever reason, you know and but they didn't want to keep the baby, so they were financially supported during that time when they were pregnant. And the child was adopted out to a loving family, right?
Mhm.
And in fact, there's craziest thing happened. One of them, and I was like 8 years old or whatever at the time, gave birth in my bathroom, and I was
Oh
there. I
wow.
witnessed it. Yeah, I was like the one saying, "Hey," because yeah, it was a long story. It's a funny story, but yeah. So I've really been interested in what's going on out here, because that was on the mainland, right?
Mhm.
I'm interested in what's going on out here for um, people that are in that situation. What a tough situation, right? To be pregnant and not have the support that you need, and or be willing to raise your own child. I mean, that's a really, really tough choice. Yeah. So I don't know. To me, it's really strong in my heart to, kind of help present the alternatives to abortion rather than sort of come down on this kind of dogmatic,
Yeah,
anti-feminist,
right.
legalistic kind of thing. In terms of my religious beliefs, I do believe we all fall short, right? So
That would be
it's hard to
that would be
judge.
the right one.
I don't know. What
As
Matt? What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I have like on I'm gonna write this down so that I don't forget what I wanted to talk about on this topic. So there's like multiple angles, right? Like feminists are, that term is actually a derogatory term that was come up with, like some dude came up with like in the 70s or 80s, and it kind of just caught on. The better, not really better term, but the term that my step grandmother uses, because she believes in equality, is equality. And that's where just because you're a man or just because you're a woman, you don't get any upper hand, so to speak. You should be on level playing ground, not that you are a woman, so you are not equal. It's everyone should just be equal. It's not pro female or pro male, it's pro equality, right? So both sides of the coin are equal, where each have their own role in the eyes of like importance and like opportunity. Those things should be equal. I mean, we all know that men are obviously stronger physically. That's why we don't have, I mean, I always think about this when you have tennis matches, like they're like a bottom, or not bottom, but like a collegiate male player would probably be able to compete toe to toe with a top 10 female WTA touring pro, right? Like the like mentality aside, physically they would probably be able to compete. I know Serena Williams has, did she beat Andy Roddick, or did she like go toe to toe with Andy Roddick? For the most part, most females strength wise, physically, that's why we separate them when we do physical competitions, are different. That's I'm not saying that they need to be playing against each other in NBA and we should have a multi-league or multi-gender league or anything like that. But I think that the more important thing is equality. And then with the equality, I mean, I think for abortion and for that pro-life, pro-choice camp, I think that it should be up to the person who is going through it. Because like you said, that system that your mom participated in is awesome, right? I mean, most people have to go through pregnancy without help, right? Most of these people who are going to get this abortion, maybe they don't know who the dad is, they, for whatever reason, or maybe they do and they don't want to bear that person a child, whatever it is, but they don't
Right.
want it, right? It's not really about like, I don't like children. It most times is about, I don't want this particular thing to happen, or I don't want to let this ruin my life or to change my life,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Verbatim. Ruin my life, right?
Yeah, and even if um they, the pregnant person, does want this child, the odds are stacked very heavily against them, because unlike other countries, when you are pregnant, you are still expected to go to work. You're still expected to do everything that you're supposed to do. And when you have that child, you're still expected to, after maternity leave, come back to work and figure out a plan for daycare, for childcare, right? In Japan, they pretty
Right.
much pay you 2 to 3 years of living wage to raise your child, right?
Wow.
And in Japan, childbirth is free. I mean, whatever it costs is covered, right? Medically.
Mm.
While you're gonna suffer when you are pregnant because you don't get any stipends or anything, but after you have the child, you are pretty much, I don't want to say you're a burden on society, but you're pretty much like on some sort of government income. In America, if that were to be the case all the time, we would have, it would be like, it's going to sound terrible, but there's a lot of people who just have children to be on welfare. It might evolve to something like that. Whereas in Japan, because there's a children's shortage, the government wants you to have children, so they will pay all citizens equivocally. Doesn't matter if you make too little bit or make too much, everyone gets, I don't know, maybe if you make too much, you can, but for my understanding, you get a type of subsidy. Now, that's the financial part. That's like my brain instantly goes to like, all right, if you want this person to have a child, how are they going to pay for it? There's so many factors when raising kids, and a lot of it has to do with financial. So financial stability is really important when
Right.
talking to somebody about having this child, right? Because it's going to cost a lot of money. Many people,
Well, well, I
no,
mean, yeah, but let me just. I'm
go ahead.
sorry to. I want
No, no,
to
no.
reframe that. Just that one point is just to say, well, you know, that can happen at any. I could lose my means of income right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then how am I going to pay for my 3 kids? But does it, not going to abort them at this point? Yeah.
Right, right. But at this point, this would be kind of like the beginning, right? So let's say for this, just to make things like, I guess you could call it equal. Like if you had triplets on the way, right? And you lost your job, would that determine whether or not you were going to abort them or not? That wouldn't, right? It wouldn't. And it shouldn't. It
But
shouldn't.
that kind of is the
Right.
paradigm controlling,
Right.
I think, a lot of abortions, right? And I mean,
But
like
and
my mother is very pro abortion, yeah. And so
oh,
she'll always raise the point about, well, what about a child, a child that's raped by someone? Do they have to carry their
mhm,
um you know uh child to, birth,
to term, you're right,
right,
right.
to term? Doesn't seem right at all. That seems like a huge injustice, right?
Hmm.
But I don't know. I would say half everybody's like you said. They're like, oh, I'm going to ruin my life. And then if they decide to go ahead and ruin their life, they decide, oh, most of the time, I think probably like myself, they say, well, this is the best thing. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, right? Oh, I love
Hmm.
my kids so much. I talk to so many other dads who just say the same thing, right? You're so worried before you have a kid because you feel like they're going to ruin your life. And then you realize that that's when life really started.
No,
And so I guess that's my
that's
point.
and it's hard because I kind of talked a little bit about this, not this particular topic, but in the world of trading, right? What we do for, not for fun, but we do as part of our life. We're traders. We are investment stock traders. You won't know anything, even if you were to paper trade. Like if you paper trade, that's there's no risk. Like, right? There's no investment emotionally into this stuff.
Right.
But
Just your
when
time.
right, just your time. And but
Yeah.
when you are investing thousands of dollars, there's a ton of not only emotional, right? You work for this money. It's not like money fell out of the sky. You are in some words, some way responsible for this money. If you lose it, it's gone. But until somebody goes on the platform and does any trading, they have no idea they could read all the books they want, learn all about probabilities, learn all about how the futures market work, learn all about how tradings work, learn all about how stocks work. But until you actually are in it, you have no idea. And that's just trading. It's not bringing life into this world, right? But yet you can't, like, I can't tell somebody how it's going to be trading. I well, I can't tell them, but whether, like, they won't be able to comprehend everything that I mean until they start doing it. So like you said with the father thing, unless they become a father, you can tell them as much as you want. This pre-father or single no kids person, that's like a not parent, just an individual, they will have no idea. And you can't tell them this. You can't teach them this. They will just have to figure it out on their own. So is it the government's responsibility to do that? Right? To have that choice? Like, is the government forcing everybody to make that choice? And I don't know which way is right or wrong. Personally, most of the females that I know are pro-choice, and they're pro-choice
Yeah.
for mainly these two reasons. It's the ectopic pregnancies, which is where if you don't abort, you will lose the mother, and the fetus will die because I believe that's when the egg is stuck somewhere in the fallopian tube.
Right. Yeah. I've read about those. They're a real risk, and I don't know, certain types of birth control or whatever
Yeah,
can relate to that, right? That you
yeah,
get pregnant anyway, but it's not in the place where the IUD is or whatever. So, and
yeah.
I
So
have like complete empathy for that. Oh my gosh, if my wife had that, I would totally want her to have the abortion, right? At least that would be my first reaction. I mean, why would
and
I
it,
want to sacrifice my wife just for my values about some fetus that I never even met?
and also the fetus has to be aborted as well, because there's no way that that pregnancy could even get to like 5 or 6 weeks. It would kill the mom first.
There you
Because
go.
and and that's where it becomes like, well, like if a physician says it's medically necessary, then should that be the um what's the right word? Should that be an
Sorry,
okay
I got
thing
my
to
dog.
do with abortions? And I don't
Right.
know. It's really difficult, because no matter which way you spin this or look at this, there's always going to be a moral, ethical, like agenda, and a kind of medical, I don't know, like recipe for this on either side, right? You can say, well, people who have multiple abortions, they are less likely to be able to have a pregnancy, like a full term pregnancy, because of whatever's, the damage that they could have caused, or it could have caused them. But then again, like, what about the pregnancies that they don't want? What kind of mental or psychological ramifications would it have for someone who does not want to have this child because they were either raped, or if they just left the guy or whatever? Would that mentally, for their psychological well-being, is that medically necessary then to terminate? Like
Right.
there's
Yeah, but good
too
point.
many
There's
there's
a lot
too
of
many
problems.
yeah, there's too many variables, and that's why I think that the government should just stay out of it, for lack of
Yeah.
better terms. Like, no regulation is better. Less regulation,
Yeah.
I don't think it should be
Yeah.
the choice of our government to govern those types of things, unless,
Oh, just regulate for safety then.
yeah, like,
Okay.
you shouldn't
That's
be
fair.
having these things in like foreign countries or something, or what have you.
Right.
I'm not
Clothes
a
hangers.
Yeah, I'm not a medical person, and I don't know how these things are, but that's just what I think.
Right. That's a good point. If people are gonna do it anyway, might as well make it humane, right?
Yeah,
And maybe there's a number of things that I mean, it's hard because when you don't make things illegal that are harmful, it's as if you're condoning it, right?
right.
And so it's hard. I think both of us are generally thoughtful people who want to, you know, support the liberty of other people, but also want to see that governments are supportive of our well-being, right? Or
I
what
don't
would you say?
like.
The government, that's not the government's role, not
Well,
at a
the
state level or anything.
the government should be in favor of society, right?
Okay.
That's to me, the government's like, their purpose is to govern a society, like a group of people. And I don't think that they should be governing that, like abortion, unless, so, like, when we had the pandemic, we had all these emergency powers and these kind of crazy restrictions. If we were in some sort of severe, I don't know, population catastrophe where, I don't know, 80% of the Americans were killed in some way or form, And
Mm,
the only way we were going to ever be successful as a society again would be to have increased population. Then
right.
perhaps we would have, I don't think they would say abortions are illegal, but that's when I think that the government should step in and be more like Japan's government, where we would reward those folks who have many children or that have kids in the form
I
of
like that. Right.
like,
Incentives.
yeah, like
Yeah.
maybe
They
if you
already
get
kind of do
pregnant,
anyway, right?
well, there's a child tax. But think about it, honestly, as much as that stuff helps, that would not be enough to like survive off of. And if that were the case, then you dip into poverty, right? Like welfare and having kids to get food stamps and all those things. And that's a different, I don't think that's the conversation or the purpose of said legislation. Even in my example, where we are trying to increase population, I don't think we should force people into poverty so that they can have kids safely. They should be, you still can go to work, everything else, but during this period of motherhood, we're going to grant you this, what's the word when they take a vacation? Sabbatical.
Um,
We're going to
yeah.
grant you this sabbatical so you can raise your family, but only when and
Yeah.
if we have like a severe population problem. Because
Right.
other than that, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
see
uh-huh.
the government like, I don't see how their purview doesn't make sense to me. I can see regulating. I mean, if they start regulating population by having us do crazy things like being able to kill each other, like that movie, The Purge, that would be ridiculous too. But
Yeah.
from the flip side and from the current event that's happening, I just don't think it's. I didn't read the law. I don't know what this case is about. I don't like. I
Oh,
tell people that I don't really look into things that I think are ridiculous on principle, because what am I gonna gain from it, But for the
right.
sake of
Right.
this conversation,
Conversation.
like what does it
Uh-huh.
what is this case? Like, who are these two people and what did they fight about? What was the
Roe v.
case?
Wade.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a classic. It's one of those um, court cases that was a landmark that set the precedent for um, abortions being legal.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's from quite some time ago, and has stood the test of time until now. So it's interesting that the court opinion draft was leaked, and it sounds like, I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. Everybody can talk about it. So I'm glad we had
Yeah.
a chance to talk about it too.
Yeah.
The
Well,
only other thing, and I can't weigh in on it. I want to, and I want to weigh on it on the side of the LGBT. I want to.
mhm.
I haven't quite worked it out in my own head how I feel about it, but I want to be on their side, because um, that's kind of one of the issues that's floating around this kind of topic that we've been discussing is, do gays and lesbians and other, not heteronormal couples, do they also get to adopt children?
Mhm.
I wanna weigh in on their favor. I don't know enough about LGBTQ issues to say or not,
Is that up
to
for
really.
debate somewhere? Because
Uh,
as far as I
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, in Hawaii.
I've seen people. Oh, wow, I've seen lesbian and gay couples adopt children before. Like,
Hmm.
I didn't know that that was
So,
anything.
um,
Hmm.
yeah, because they in Hawaii they legalized gay marriage, right?
Right, right.
But uh, uh, what I was hearing in the conversation I was having yesterday, I don't want to cite the specific organization because I'm not sure if this is true. This is just hearsay. But
Mhm.
that this other organization that's faith-based and facilitates a lot of the adoptions or whatever. Their policy is not to adopt children out to homosexual couples, or I apologize if homosexual isn't the correct or comprehensive term, but non-heterosexual couples,
right, the non
right,
biblically proper couples, if using
you want to say biblically proper couples, that would encompass a lot of heterosexual couples too, and that really is the core of what would be my argument if I weighed in their favor, which I want to, but I'm not, which is to say that there are so many couples that are heterosexual, including myself and my wife, who fall so short of the glory of God, or however we want to say the standards of ethics. I mean, however we want to, expression of love or psychological health, or whatever paradigms and frameworks we want to use to describe that. I really do have to grapple with my sense that there are so many really high quality LGBTQ ... couples out there for adopting children, and I think it would just be don't want to weigh in. Okay.
Right.
You hear where I'm going with it, right?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where that shouldn't be a qualifying, like to adopt the child should be more of a qualifying metric than a quantitative metric, right? Like you can say you need to meet certain financial means, right, to adopt someone. Like you can't be quote unquote below the poverty line and adopt a child like that. That you wouldn't be a prime parental I guess home if you were on welfare and living in public housing. That wouldn't be the ideal scenario, because I remember I have two people that I knew that adopted children. One of them went to my church, and one of them was my Japanese professor at college. They adopt children, and they mentioned it was really difficult. Like it wasn't easy to meet all the qualifications, to meet all the financial minimums or requirements. So I don't think that man woman should be a quantifying metric to measure the worthiness of someone to be parents. But back to the biblical thing. Sorry, but for those of you who don't know,
go ahead.
The biblical way to get, like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You cannot get divorced. So both Sam and I would be unfit to get, I mean, anything. We're kind of shunned in the eyes of the church, so to speak. And women,
mine was annulled, but go on. Mine was annulled.
So your marriage was annulled, so you never got married in the first place then?
It didn't have those critical qualities that the church would say are essential to a marriage. So because of that, it was a legal marriage, but not a spiritual marriage in the sense that the church understands.
Okay.
But sorry, go ahead.
No,
but I'm guilty in so many ways that I'm right with you. Go on.
Right. So, and then there's for example, if you are having premarital sex, that's not condoned by the church, and that is not a good marriage. If you live together before you're married, not good. Not good meaning, no, we would not acknowledge this. But churches nowadays, as in my case, they have become a little more forgiving. I didn't pay my church, and I always say that in certain churches, you just, repent, you give a small donation, all is forgiven. But churches nowadays have become a lot more loose with their guidelines, because, we live in the 21st century. These rules were made back in zero, right? Before zero, BC. And society was a little bit different back then. But I still think that if the church wants to interpret the Bible literally, it really shows that they don't they're not moving with the times. And if the church or faith organization that will use that biblical reference to a quote unquote biblically sound family of a man and a woman, then they're missing sight of a lot of things. And I don't know if they know this, maybe they do, but I'm pretty sure the 50% of all marriages that end in divorce are probably and most likely heterosexual marriages end in divorce. So it's not like everyone out there is doing a grandiose job, whether or not they are, just because they are heterosexual. Sorry, that's what I want to say. Just because they are man and woman doesn't
Right.
make it any
There are so
better.
many ways. There are so many ways you could judge or critique a person's merits, right? And to so fully focus on what their preferences are in terms of what they like to do with their private parts just seems so.
Right.
I mean, as
Yeah.
long as they stay away from kids,
Right.
right?
Goodness.
As long as they
And you
other
respect
types of
respect
people
your
who
partner.
are vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? Like, right, exactly. So I see so many.
Yeah.
So it's, and the Pope told, invited all, people of different sexual orientations to return to church, right?
Mhm.
So this is where I don't want to weigh in because I need to talk to people that know more about it and read some more about it so I can understand, because I do go to a church, so I don't want to just make up my own doctrine, right? I gotta
Well,
stick with my
this
team.
is kind of just to build on your point there. I'm in the camp that Jesus wanted everybody to love everybody, not in a sexual way, but in a familial kind of brothers and sisters kind of a way. So
Right.
you shouldn't be judging your brothers and sisters just because they do different things, right? I'm not saying
Right.
that marriage is like a hobby, like just other people have different hobbies. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that shouldn't condone anyone just because they're not, or you don't understand. And we all, if you believe in the Holy Trinity, then you yourself embody the Holy Spirit. So how you interpret both what God tells you, the book tells you, your pastor tells you, still needs to be filtered through your portion of the Holy Spirit. So just because the doctrine of the church says something, but if it doesn't jive well with you, that's something you need to think about as well, because you yourself do embody the Spirit of Jesus. Even though you think you're unclean, you're impure, whatever, Jesus made it so that everybody has access. So just because you're, Sam, you're a great person, you raise your kids, you do what you can for your family, you're on this health journey, you're trying to make sure your longevity for your kids, for your family, that's awesome, right? That is what people should be doing, right? Now, I'm not saying you're the embodiment of Jesus Christ. I'm just saying that you are doing what you can. And that's
no, she lives in Korea or something, right? Sorry, side tangent. But that's so sweet of you to say like that, man, and relate. And I totally agree with what you're saying, man. It's like I feel like when we look at what we've been given biologically, right? And we can see that, heterosexual couples like ourselves are able to procreate. Some are, some aren't, right? Like just like everybody else, right? And then people, female and male couples are not able to procreate, so therefore they shouldn't procreate, right? Because they cannot. But actually, adoption is a different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all been given the ability to adopt, whether you're fertile or sterile or whatever, those virile or whatever these words are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So since God has endowed that capability upon each of us equally, shouldn't we therefore allow each and other people that liberty especially in that type of imminent situation, like you were describing, if the population was suddenly cut in, down to 20%, and we, needed to outlaw abortions or incentivize child rearing to repopulate the world or whatever. In the same way, there's this need for adoptive parents, right? So kids don't have to go into foster care,
Yeah. I
right? I'm not a social worker, so I can't
Yeah,
tell you specifically
right.
on the ground level, but I take it that that's what the case is. And so why not? And then as like, like I said, I'm like in the church under the Pope, right? So then the Pope says bring them back into church. Then why shouldn't we as Christian people, or as I want to take Christian out, so it's not, it's, I mean, as
Well,
loving
it's
people, so that it
yeah,
transcends. I
yeah,
want to say, as loving people, right? Why shouldn't we recognize the capability of any couple, regardless of their orientations, to nurture and love a child, right? That's a God-given thing.
right. And we all, I mean,
I don't know.
there's a reason why it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, it's not that you're gonna be married to the village people, it's that every single grown up adult does have the capability and does partake in the raising of children. Therefore, we're all able to raise children. Not saying that everyone is going to be
Yeah,
a great parent, but everyone has the qualities and the capabilities to become a parent. That's just how it is.
right. Like,
So
what is the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
now I was gonna say, so how then should these? Because as much as so, it's really hard to put rules on things that are like social and faith work, right? Like these organizations, faith organizations that go to like other countries to help. We don't regulate that, right? Like if my church went to Mexico, we might bring like, we might buy them health insurance, we might buy them a plane ticket. But what they do there, we have no idea. They might send us pictures, but there's no governing on what they do there. So it's hard for, what I'm trying to say is it's hard for like an adoption agency to receive criticism when they're doing everything nonprofit. When they are doing something for the community like adoption, it's hard. It's just hard for me to say you should be an equal opportunity adoption parent organization. I mean, there might be laws for that. I think there should be, but it's hard for me to say that because as a business owner, you got to do things legally, right? Pay your taxes, equal opportunity employer, all those kinds of things, right? But it's hard for me to think that that's for everything, especially for nonprofit. Like if I was making money in America, yes, follow the rules to make money. But if I was a social, like nonprofit community building type of organization, it's really hard to say government should be telling them to do all these things. They might, but I'm just saying that that's like, I understand that it's awesome that the faith organizations have these programs to provide adoption. But it's hard for me to say that we should be telling the faith organization that they have to let people who they don't believe are fit to raise kids to allow them to raise kids. It's just, I'm not.
Yeah, well, what if
I'm
they
not in
said
favor.
Asians aren't fit? What if they say Asians aren't fit to raise kids or something,
I
right?
mean, yeah, I would
I
think.
mean, yeah,
I would
I
think that
guess though,
that would
right?
be their. See, I don't know the rules around adoption, but I would think
Mhm.
that should be, as wrong as it's going to sound, that should be within their discretion because they're the organization that's doing it in a faith-based kind of system. It's kind of like if you were Christian and you had a Christian faith-based adoption organization and you had to be a Christian in order to adopt the baby, right? In my head, that almost makes sense because there are organizations out there. We have health insurance, well, they're called health sharing ministries, where you have to fill out a form before you apply for the health insurance that says that you are a Christian. Here's your church. This is where you go. This is your pastor's name. And then you can buy the health insurance. Because now they're going to cover you for everything that they say you are. And I've been told that they don't really check, but it's still part of their application process where you have to state that you are said so and so. The company does accept same-sex marriages, though. So they're not against that. But that is a requirement to apply for said insurance. So I don't know if for the adoption agency, if they can say you have to be a Christian, and then when it comes to that part of the process and say, oh, where's your church? And they're like, oh, we don't accept members from that church because they accept same-sex folks. I don't know what the total criteria is, but I can see that there are problems with that. I honestly don't know what the landscape is like for adoption agencies, and maybe they can go to another adoption agency that doesn't have strict regulations on who can adopt their kids. But I don't know that, again, just like how I don't think the government should be telling people to not have abortions or have abortions, I don't know where the governing laws on that are. Like I was saying, like for employers, right? There's equal opportunity employment, right? Where we can't discriminate based on race, gender, sex, marital, gender preferences, or anything like that. Or we can't discriminate in age, whatever. Whereas I'm not sure if those same rules apply for adoption agencies, and especially faith-based adoption agencies. As I mean, I don't even know, like when you go to church, like you can just show up. But I mean, if they were to invite you to be a part of their congregation, like, are there certain things that you have to be, or you have to say? Like, I know at a certain church out here, they don't let any of their staff be members of the church, because if the staff are members of the church, that might influence the way that funds are allocated. So they have a separation of salaried members, or salaried staff, and then a membership committee, which are actual people who are on the church board, who are members but aren't paid staff. And you cannot be both, because it wouldn't be fair. You would have an upper hand on many different things. Well, yes, all the information is shared, but it keeps that accountability and the kind of separation of corporation and congregation very clear.
Interesting.
So again, I don't know which way is which, but I don't know which way is better.
Yeah, I always wondered why Catholic priests were, not allowed to marry.
I think they are now, though, right?
No, they're not.
They're still not?
I'm so unknowledgeable because I'm a convert that and I say convert, but I don't know if I actually gave up, or they asked me to give up any of my beliefs from being a Protestant, right? So I don't know if it's really a convert, but more like a addition. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of a duplex. So then,
combo meal.
Oh, my thought about that is that, I forgot what I was talking about. Now I remember. Priests don't get married. And so in my class, I asked about that. I was like, how come priests aren't allowed to get married? And one of the priests was there as kind of a guest speaker. Our teacher was a woman, but the priest was there, and he explained that actually in the early days, they were allowed to get married,
Wow.
but they developed that rule for a very similar kind of reason, that they felt like they would have divided, the priests would have divided interests, and it would lead to less than optimal financial caretaking. So, because they're always thinking about the financial well-being of their church and their family, they felt it was better for priests to just have one, one, not have divided interest in that same way.
It makes sense, but it's really, it's like a nun, right? So nuns and sisters like that, they have to be like completely up, like completely their loyalties lie in the church, in the church walls, and they're kind of just removed from other obligations. Although now I think, and I don't know where I heard this, but now I think that nuns actually go home. It's like a 9 to 5 job. They go to work, dress up, and they go home. I don't know if that's true or
there's a
not.
couple ladies at church that, because I was going to say, I've been a Catholic now for 7 years or something like that, and I'm not sure I've actually. I know I've met nuns before, but I can't really say I know any nuns. But when I come to think of it, there might be a couple of women who are actually, I don't know if they're nuns or not technically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't see that much people walking around with the nun thing anymore, and it's kind of disappointing because I was looking forward to that too.
Yeah,
They should spend more time around the Catholic schools or something. They'll have nuns, won't they?
Yeah, I think you have to be a sister in order to teach there. But it's odd, right? Because I think that now they can there's more separation, because so here's the part where it gets really muddy, and it's when you have real world experience, right? Like when you're in the vacuum of the church, you don't really know how to talk to people outside of church. And you can't really bring experiences from outside the church into the church to help kind of grow the congregation. And also, when you're in the walls of the church only, you tend to have very narrow views, right? Because you really only have, like, your echo chamber is like maybe 15 people, right? 15 people talking. Imagine if your Twitter feed was just 15 people who you had to listen to 24 hours a day. You'd go insane. That's pretty much what the insides of, I would assume, of an old cathedral would be like with the nuns there. And I think that they did that to increase kind of their real world knowledge, to kind of modernize the church. But that also brings in the possibility that now these people who have had such a controlled, I don't want to say sheltered, but kind of a controlled, sheltered life, to be exposed to the world outside, and it's very different, very changed, right? There's technology, there's a lot more ways to get instant gratification. So will it pollute now the insides of the sanctum? And I don't know. As human nature would be, possibly scenario 2 is most likely, but I hope not. I hope the church is able to absorb what's happening in the real, not the, we're all in the real world, unless we're all in a simulation, from the outside church world into the church world, to make it, better, make it more human, so to speak. Because I think that the church is good. And I heard this quote really, was it yesterday, the day before, is that you can blame a lot of the world's history problems on the church, but without the church, imagine how much worse it would have been, because the church gives people a unifying goal, right? And a unifying kind of purpose. If no one had a purpose, what would we all be doing? Well, we'd all be trying to get the most we can. We see something we like, we think we can beat him up, we're going to do it. Because guess what? no one's watching. But for the church, who's always watching? God's always watching. So you have a unifying goal, purpose, and you also have an ultimate, disciplinary feature, right? So if there was none of that, and some people say we'd be better off without it, I don't know, because we don't know what would have happened with it. We may not even be here without the church. Who knows? I don't know. But I think that for, like, I guess when we have both sides too much intermingled, we might lose a lot of the culture and history, kind of like how the Hawaiian people have lost a lot of their culture and history because we become way too integrated with the prevailing culture, and thus that is the only culture now, right? Except with pocket of like radicals, right? So who knows what's going to happen?
Good things to come, Matt. Good
I
things
hope
to
so.
come. Yeah.
I hope so. We ended on a really sad note, but anything good going on? Some positivity to end this. Nothing.
I mean, gosh, it's hard to. I'm trying to think of how to encapsulate it all, and I mean, there's so many things that are just awesome that are going on right now, man. We can focus on that next time. It's sorry to leave it on a sad note.
I guess
there is a lot of sadness in this world.
Yeah,
it's okay to express that.
There is, but I guess the main thing is that we all have the choice, right? Whether you are one side of the coin or the other, currently you have a choice. And I always say this, especially in 2016. I think it's 2016. I said, if you don't like who the president is, you can always leave. So if they don't like the laws of this country, you can always leave. I'm not saying people go ahead and be expats, but what I'm saying is if it really is like your core is completely destroyed due to whatever's happening, there's lots of ways to live in another country.
And the grass is always greener on the other side too, right? You can't run away from yourself.
No, and that's why it's interesting. All my friends who said they were going to move, guess what? They never left.
No.
There you go.
Right,
so it's always up to you.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Bye-bye.